Welcome back to Monday Mornings with Max and Mike. Mikey, how we doing today, buddy?
Doing pretty good. I'm sitting over here learning some lessons. I woke up, I had this master plan to go do yoga this morning. I had a power vinyasa yoga session scheduled. And as I started getting up and ready to get out the door, Ashley let me know that she still wasn't feeling well. She started feeling a little under the weather last night, and that she requested that I stay home with her and take care of her. And
What a request.
And initially I was like, what a childish thing to request of another adult. And then I realized that she will, without me asking, always put herself aside and help me when I'm in a similar position. And we've had conversations lately where it's like, yeah, you don't really view the relationship the same way I do. And she's like, that's one of the things I really like about you is you're so independent minded and you take care of yourself. Like, you're always in good shape. You're always eating really well. You're always getting out in nature. You're doing the things for you, which is what most people don't do. And that's what I love about you. And it can be a bit annoying when you totally disregard other people for your own thing. So I got like triggered at first. I go, oh shit. I was like, not this silly. I'm going to yoga. And then
just knee-jerk reaction the opposite direction. I
Yeah.
wouldn't know anything about that.
Don't need. Yeah, that's all I need is information. That's the only information I need to. Yeah, and I was like, all right, take a breath. I go, okay. You know what? I'm gonna do this for her. So yeah, canceled the class. Went and got superfood smoothie for her. Helped her schedule time to go get an IV for immune boosting stuff. So
What a guy.
yeah, well,
Can I just say I'm stoked that she asked you also?
Oh, really?
Like, I think there's a pretty awesome thing there. She's not trying to make you guess what she wants. She's like, I would like
true.
this. And you are free. You are free to do that, or you're free to not do that. But I like that she asked directly. No ask, no get. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think that's been part of the conversation is she had not been asking. She was just expecting. And I wasn't meeting those expectations. So she did the healthy thing in relationships, which is to bring it up, not in a moment where I'm fucking up, but in a moment where everything's good. It's like, I would really like it if this was a little bit different. So when she asked, it was not something completely out of the blue. I go, oh, this is what she's talking about. This is the moment she's been preparing me for. And this is the moment I've been conditioned and trained to respond to. So, and I know it's like, oh, okay, we're going to have, the plan is to have kids and this and that. And I go, I should start practicing now. Because I think if you go from I'm my own person straight into like we're having a kid, that can be a bit jarring. So working at easing my way into this family thing.
Nice. I like that. Since I got the 2 dogs, there's a lot of that in my household. It's a cooperation, which is like where corporation comes from, right? It's a partnership where it's our responsibility now to make sure these dogs are alive and healthy and maybe even happy if there's time for it. One of the things that you brought up that's so big, because as you know, I've had a gym for 14 years now. A lot of people come into the gym right after they get divorced. It is almost like clockwork. As soon as you get divorced, boom, you start getting into the gym and working out. It's a really funny trigger. And a lot of relationships deteriorate because there's a lack of clarity in this is what I am looking for and this is what I'm willing to give, right? There's give and take to it. And what I see happen a lot of times is people live in debt in a relationship. Basically, rather than voice the concerns in a healthy way, they'll just bring up the things that they don't like uh, forward into perpetuity. Like, oh, you didn't help me when I was sick. You never helped me out, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of resentment comes from. So I just refer to that as living in debt in a relationship. You can't really ever pull yourself out of it, so you're always at a deficit in the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said. There's a lot of things that jump out at me. Um, One is this. I already lost one when I was trying to write down. The relationship debt's interesting because I think it's a great term for it, and I also think about boundaries and this whole idea of expectations. Is a lot of these internal expectations are simply boundaries or desires that have never been communicated, and that's usually where resentment comes up. We start resenting people because they crossed the boundary, but
That was invisible.
yeah, yeah, that we never fucking told them about. And
How
they
dare you cross the boundary that you didn't know was there?
exactly. Well, and I think the reason it's so prominent is because people don't even know their own boundaries. They have not become
Oh yeah.
consciously aware of their boundaries well enough to be able to communicate them ahead of time. So, when I work with clients, one of the things that I teach them is to start learning where their boundaries are by tuning into how they feel as they operate in the world. And if you ever get angry or something like bumps up against that energy where you're like, whoa, 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 um, then you know, okay, now I need to take the energy that's in my body that does not speak English or doesn't speak in words and translate that into something that I can define for somebody else so I can communicate that. So most people don't communicate their boundaries because they don't even consciously know what their boundaries are.
Mm.
They accumulate all this stress over time, which is that relationship debt you're talking about. And then one day they just fucking blow up, or they never become conscious of it and they just end up angry and resentful of the other person and really can't even come up with an explanation why they are no longer in love or whatever it is.
And
So,
sometimes it's not even for that. It's because they just don't want there to be any small conflict in the short term.
right.
So
There's
they
that.
know
Yeah.
they know what their boundary is. They know that a boundary is being crossed, but they go, "Oh, I'll tolerate it." And you know how
Mm,
I detest the word tolerance. I think tolerance is the seed of resentment. That's where resentment comes in. So you should either, I mean, you should. I think it makes more sense to either accept or reject something. But if you tolerate it, you are allowing resentment to grow for this thing. You're like, oh, I'm just going to tolerate this behavior that I really don't like. And tolerating is very different than accepting because there's a resentment to it. And I mean, I've been in a few relationships where um, people I've been with have made a big deal about all the stuff that they do for me and made it seem like I have this debt that I owe. And so I
hmm
remember every time something like that would get brought up, I would be like, fine, don't do anything for me again. It's not worth the debt. Like,
Right. Right.
don't make me dinner. Don't give me a shoulder rub. Do nothing for me. But
Right.
because I would rather not live in debt than get whatever that gift is, which is not really a gift if it's going to be, you know, accounted for later in an aggressive verbal way. I'd be like, forget it. Don't do anything for me because it's not worth the debt that you fall into.
Yeah.
So
Well, that
that's
sounds like
it's kind of like tolerance.
Kind of. I think that's somebody who's like tolerating you, right? Like they they're doing for you all the things that you want they want you to do for them, and they're wishing that you were different.
They just want me to owe, basically,
They want you what?
because it changed. They want me to owe. I owe you something.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like so that's why I say it's like, oh, well, if I owe you, then there's a difference in the
Totally.
power relationship dynamic.
But I think it starts with like not realizing who you actually are. And
Mm,
I've been in a few relationships where they're like someone's surprised by something and I go, this is normal behavior for me. This is like what you signed up for. This isn't,
hmm
you know, I never represented anything differently than this, but you know, they get in a relationship and overlook that thing, they tolerate it, and then or
hmm
they tolerate the lack of something, thinking that they can change you by creating some type of reciprocity where, you know, they try to make you feel like you owe them. And you know, that usually just comes from it's probably how, you know, she, you know, usually like we're guys, so we date women. Maybe how she related to her dad, you know. It's like how
hmm
I how I get things from the world.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, how one party can tolerate something for a long time, and then there's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and you're like, whoa, that seems like not that big of a deal in the
Right.
grand scheme of things, but there's just this accumulated debt. Like, funny story, I mean, I laugh about it now, but many of the ladies that I've had longer term relationships with, like over a year, um maybe even over 2 years, a lot of them get married right afterward. So far it's really odd because I have a strict policy against marriage. I don't understand the value of bringing all the magic of government bureaucracy into my romantic relationship. I just see I see absolutely no gain for that. And I also don't want kids. And I think what has happened many times is a lady will tolerate that for a while, but then secretly she's like hoping that she will change me. And even if I explicitly say, don't hold your breath for me to change my mind about this, it's almost hard to not do that sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think that's just something I've noticed personally.
Yeah. For the record, we're not going to be signing any type of agreement with any government entities in regard to our marriage when we get married. So
Right.
it's state dependent on how these things operate. I think Alabama is one of the few states that the contract is between the two individuals, and whereas every other state it's between the individual and the state,
Mhm.
and then the other individual. There's a state in between the two of you, um, and that's actually like an admission of being a ward of the state. And
Hmm.
then yeah, there's like all these little legal slippery slope things that exist. So then if you have a marriage license with the state and you have children, now your children become a ward of the state, not a ward of you, the actual parent. And
Minor detail.
yeah,
Jesus.
that's how people leverage the legal system to uh go after your kids in different ways. Like
Whoa.
to yeah, to that leaves the door leaves the door open for child protective services to have a lot more standing in
Hmm.
what's going on. So, you're in California, so if someone has kids and they don't want to vaccinate them, uh and maybe they choose they're not going to go to school,
Hmm.
then they might send child protective services to come check on what's going on. That actually happened with a friend here in Texas. Is he and his wife had a child, They um, uh, they refused any and all vaccinations and any medication at the hospital. Like just
Mm-hmm.
nothing. There's like, no, like we're gonna get this kid home. Kid's healthy. We'll figure out how we're gonna do any type of immunization afterwards. There's no, we're good.
There's no
And
rush.
yeah, and the address they had on file was my other friend's home, and Child Protective Services showed up to their house to do a welfare check. And
Whoa.
and my buddy, he thought he didn't know why they were there, and he's got some kids, and he thought they were there to come talk to him about their kids, and he about, you know, they almost got some Texas style uh, talking to get off the
Oh my
property.
gosh.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was. Anyways, shit happens. That shit's for real.
Right.
But yeah, there's like a lot of legal stuff which people can go back and listen to the show I did with Jesse Elder where we talk about the law and taxes and all sorts of stuff if they want to
Mm.
go dig into that conversation. So there's a rabbit hole there. One thing I've learned in the last year is lawyers know about as much about law as MDs know about health. It's rare to find one that actually really grasps it.
Mm.
And the typical version of this, not all MD. I'm friends with some MDs that are like fucking amazing.
Mm. Right.
But uh, the average MD you run into, you start talking about nutrition or exercise or whatever, they're
Mm-hmm.
a child in the understanding of these things. They don't know shit. Um,
Well, they know
and
what they were told.
and
That's the big thing, right?
the
There's
same thing
the
happens with same thing with law. They just know what they were told. They go, this is how it
mm-hmm.
works. They know everything at a very surface level. They don't have a depth of like understanding of how the laws were. They are taught that in school, but it's one of those things where it's like introductory, boom. Now we're getting into all this other uh, statutory law, which is founded on very a very sandy foundation.
It's a lot of jargon to sift through, and it's not even necessarily it's not even possible to have a lot of what you need in the tool belt. You know how I talk about you have like tool belt knowledge, and then you have the toolbox, which you have to go retrieve it from somewhere.
Right.
Tool belt knowledge is with you at all times. So for me, tool belt knowledge is most people are looking for love, power, attention in that order. And when people get afraid, they operate from their lizard brain rather than their mammalian brain or their wizard brain, the neocortex. But there are other specific things that I would have to go look up. So a lot of being a doctor or lawyer is knowing where to look. It's like a physicist
Mm-hmm.
memorizing every single equation. I remember taking physics class and they would just give you a giant piece of paper, like a full page of paper of equations. And your job was not to memorize the physics equation, it was to know when to use which one to solve the problem, which is critical thinking. And if you're super entrenched in medicine, let's say, there's a lot of gatekeeping involved with how things are done. And it's done in a very mechanical way rather than a very holistic way, because that's the only acceptable solution based on most Western medicine, let's say. It's not clear and repeatable enough to treat things with sunshine and fasting, right? It's much more obvious to be, oh, you need some statins. You need a statin drug to like lower this or something. It's very mechanical.
There's not enough
Uh,
statins in your system. That's the
right,
problem.
exactly. You need more stuff in there. So that's how I think about it. It's more about knowing which like with your critical thinking, which book to go look in for that information you need, because you could really, you can only store so much unless you're, um, extremely gifted or cursed with remembering every single thing you've ever read and experienced.
Yeah, knowing where to look is one thing. The other thing is just the where you stand philosophically. Like, what's the foundation of how you understand what life is? Like,
Hmm.
if you talk to like the typical MD and you ask them what life is, you know, how they talk about what life is going to
Hmm.
dictate the types of information they're going to be looking at. If it's
Yeah.
a very mechanistic view of life, like, well, yeah, somehow magically energy is formed in mitochondria, and then that springs this and this and this, and it's like, okay, that's a really mechanistic view. But if I'm talking to a doctor or an MD and they go, life is, the sunshine and the air we breathe and movement and, living a life of purpose and meaning and all these things. It's like, okay, the,
Hmm.
the way in which that doctor is going to look to solve the problems and the formulas he's going to go look for are going to be very different than someone who says, life is, these biological steps.
It's like going to see an orthopedist who's never played a sport in his life, rather than going to see an orthopedist who is a, tennis player and jujitsu player or something like that. There's a
Absolutely.
big difference in the worldview that you're going to get from that person. Like, funny enough, the guy I had do my hernia surgery. Uh, really, really smart about that surgery. Not a super active person, and his recommendation for rehab was to not lift anything over 10 pounds for the first like 2 weeks. And I was like, anything else? And he's like, no. And I thought, this is fucking stupid. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad that you have performed this procedure thousands of times to great effect. And, the way that he does it, you don't lose hip flexion, as is often the case with the inguinal hernia. So I'm really pleased with the procedure. It's been a game changer. But as far as he understood the rehab was concerned, he was an idiot. Really nice guy, super nice guy. Let me clarify. Very good surgeon. 10 out of 10 would recommend again. But the advice for rehab was so one dimensional. And I think bad, because for me, getting up out of bed creates much greater abdominal pressure than lifting even 20 or 30 pounds.
Well, how about
So
taking a shit after that surgery? I had that
to-
surgery in 2014.
totally.
Yeah, there was no rehab advice given to me, by the way, like zero. I
Yeah.
found a guy in San Jose who was, he had written. I think you and I did similar things where it's like I went and found the guy that like wrote books on this shit, and I
Yeah.
had him do the surgery.
Hmm.
And I'm happy with the results as well. But I went to Jill Miller to learn how to rehab the hernias.
Hmm.
She's a yogi,
Yeah.
but she understands kinesiology as well. And I basically had to learn how to breathe again and
Right.
use my entire abdominal cavity differently and connect with it differently. And
Hmm.
of course, she's studying it from a practical movement perspective, like how do we breathe, pranayama, like the breath of life. You know,
Mm.
she's looking at it from a she's not the person to conduct the surgery, of course, but she's
Heck
definitely
no. You need that sharp specialization. It's literally like a
well,
scalpel. You need them to
had
be
I
so sharp at that one thing.
trained with her 5 years before that, I probably would have never had it in the first place. And that's what led me to her was, why did I have a hernia? Oh,
Right.
there was a weakness somewhere. Why did I have the weakness? Oh, my breathing pattern. Like I started studying breathing and realized that I had a lifetime of like just I definitely spent a lot of time breathing hard, but
Mm.
I didn't understand breathing mechanics. I understood it to a degree, but I didn't really embody it. I didn't practice it. I didn't even know how to train the breathing. So it ended up being a gift because I learned that. But afterwards, I go, oh, another. If you talk to a lot of doctors, they'll tell you, oh, anything I can do to prevent a hernia. They're like, no, like, just don't
Yeah.
do,
Well, I mean, that's absurd,
don't lift heavy
obviously.
shit, right? But
Yeah.
uh,
Right.
but if you talk to Jill Miller about, well, where do you think hernias come from? She's like, oh, well, yeah, there's a weakness, and the way we can make sure that never happens is by creating a really solid structure and with all their muscles responsible for breathing and core stability, and so on and so forth. So,
Yeah.
uh, it's we're off on this track.
I was told the reason that I had hernias was just because when I was a baby, my testicles were so enormous that then they went through that inguinal crease. They just left a giant hole there. So giant balls was the reason for me.
uh, yeah,
I'm just
you had me there for a minute. I'm like, all right.
That is why guys are much more likely to have an inguinal, and girls who are pregnant are much likely to have an umbilical hernia, like in the belly button because of the stretching. But
yeah,
uh,
I have an article I want to share. There's this website called, let me see, iqfy.com. And it's got all of these articles in it, which it's been very difficult for me to tell whether it's like a satire parody site or not. Uh, kind of like The Onion. But I get on their Twitter, I'm looking around, I'm reading more of their stuff, and I think it's a legit. I think they're legitimately they're genuine about giving really terrible advice.
Awesome.
And like legitimately like the opposite of what a lot of people should hear. And it's been circulating amongst a couple of my friend group threads. I mean, I helped circulate it. And yeah, there's like disagreement over whether it's legit or not, but I'm pretty sure it's a genuine site. And I bring this up because the article that brought my attention to this site is titled, "They Knew. Why Didn't the Unvaccinated Do More to Warn Us?" The unvaccinated knew what we didn't. Some of them said too little. Most said nothing at all. A lot of blood is now on their hands.
That
So,
sounds like a parody that might also have some. Oh, well, I mean, I couldn't say.
well, what's funny is at the bottom they did at the bottom of the article it says, "Sorry, commenting has been disabled." Well, 85% of you are wonderful people, and we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out, whatever email address. The other 25% of recent comments, so they went from 85 and 25. They don't know how to do math. Okay, this is one tell. The other
You just want to
25%.
get this episode banned. You just want to talk about.
Well, it says the other 25% of recent comments have tended to be the result of targeted troll storms. Abuse from this vocal minority has traumatized our moderators and caused harm to our community.
That sounds
These
like a
words are
joke.
so damaging.
It sounds like a joke to me, but who knows?
Well,
If
they
someone wants to be hurt by an internet comment, then they're clearly getting something out of it.
well they keep opening and closing the comments section.
Have you ever heard the idea that being depressed is a luxury good?
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of like being offended by something you hear on the internet is sort of a luxury as well.
Totally.
You're so I always, when I'm feeling something like that, I try to argue for the feeling I'm experiencing and go like, what am I getting out of this? What am I getting out of feeling sad or overwhelmed or angry or whatever? And I try to argue for what's good about that. And you're bored or something like that. You want something to get fired up about. Maybe it's a good trigger for you to inspire some action. But I mean, the idea that something someone says to you is going to hurt your feelings, it is really just proof that you don't have real problems, right? You invent them in your own mind. And that is something I was thinking about this week. So check this out. Main difference between people and dogs. So dogs respond to reward and punishment. This is simple, straightforward, no confusion. People also respond to reward and punishment. The only difference is human beings create extra rewards and punishments in their own mind, where dogs do not. That's it. That's the only difference, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what do you think about the article? I mean, just from the headline, because it pretty much, the headline's not misleading. This is really, they just keep going deeper into it. And
Why I'm looking at it right now. This one will never air, right? Oh wait, no, it's okay to talk about
no, we're good
not
now.
wanting to take a medical experiment now.
We're good now.
It was censored a year ago.
Well, yeah, everything's coming out. They're allowing it to drip out little by little, hoping no one will notice.
So here's my confession of coward now. It's kind of like when Michael Jordan gets asked about his political views and he says everybody buys sneakers. I have been skeptical from the very, very beginning of all of this stuff. And I've written so much in my journal and different pages about like why is it suddenly okay that now all the rules don't matter anymore, and how come you can close business and all this and all that. And I could feel that there was close to a 0% chance of changing people's minds because it was so zealous. I mean, the belief that people had in two assumptions which were not founded. So assumption one is that shutting everything down is better than not doing that. That was assumption one. And then assumption two is it will give us a better result to force this medical experiment on you. Or bribe you into it. I don't know. They were offering all kinds of weird free shit.
Lotto tickets, hamburgers.
You can't fly without it. You can't go to a concert without it. I mean, I got pressured lots of times for stuff I wanted to do. So basically, they took away some carrots.
I had a buddy who I was trying to, this is one of my high school friends. I was like, hey man, probably don't want to do this. He's like, I got to get my whole family vaccinated this week because we want to go to Disney World.
Oh God, I thought you were going to say a concert or something.
He legit goes, well, we can't go to Disney World without it, and we got to do that. And I'm like, my mind is melting. I'm like, I was like, how can Disney World be? And the reason is because he obviously didn't think that the repercussions could be more negative than the negativity of not going to Disney World.
Yeah, I mean, that guy sounds insane to me, of course. But I think just between those two core assumptions that were really unprovable, the other thing that has just absolutely stunned me from the very beginning, and it makes me think it has more to do with finances and debt and government control than it has to do with public health, was the aggressiveness of the messaging and the consistency of the aggressiveness of the messaging. I mean, if you don't get this shot, you're entering the winter of death. It's like, holy fuck, am I watching Game of Thrones or something like that?
By the way, what he's saying is from the President of the United States.
I mean, look,
that is what Biden said. Like, this isn't like
insane.
Some journalist somewhere posted this. This is somebody that people think is the leader.
And my perspective has always been like, I don't want to waste my time trying to change someone's mind that won't change, especially if it's going to make them hate me. And the fact of the matter is, I think what small amount of likability I have is a big part of the reason that people decide to become my customers. Just like anything else. So I think of Michael Jordan, where they're like, "Oh, are you a Republican?" He's like, "Everybody buys sneakers." He just never answers the question.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was kind of a similar deal. Like, why would I risk saying, like, being so outspoken that, hey, doesn't anyone have any questions about that? Am I the only one that's questioning these assumptions? When there's basically no reward for it. And I think a lot of folks got pushed into it just because they didn't have the ability to be patient. Like, you can't wait to go to Disney World, like, or Disneyland or whatever like that. Um, and there are all types of um, abilities to be patient. Like, if you don't have money saved up and your job basically threatens to fire you if you don't get this medical procedure done, you are in a much tighter spot than somebody who has 2 years of expenses saved up, so
Mm-hmm.
they can figure out a new thing. So it's the same as when people just throw a Ukrainian flag up on their profile without any context of the last 10 years of the goings on in that part of the world. And it's because there's no patience and there's no desire to think for yourself. There's only a desire to stay connected to the tribe that you associate with Athens. I understand that that's a tremendous pull. Getting excommunicated from the tribe for perhaps the most social, or at least socially diverse creature ever. You could argue that bees or ants are more social uh, in one regard, but being part of the tribe is huge. So I think that's actually what happens. And it is more efficient too. It's like you have to trust something in order to not have to figure out for yourself everything. Um, Especially with getting something like surgery, or especially like getting something like legal advice, you're not going to be able to learn everything to qualify that guy. You just have to do your best. And it's much more efficient to just blindly trust. But that's also leaving you open to get fucked over the hardest, is if you just blindly follow what everybody else is doing. And I honestly, I think that's what happened. I think it's very straightforward. There was a reward to do it. There was punishment, basically, if you didn't, both literally and socially. And it's just another example of why dogs are much wiser, because all of their rewards and punishments exist in reality, and they don't create extra ones in their own minds.
Yeah. Yep. So interesting situation. Uh, it,
Yeah,
it seems like I think you're right. Like, there's no way to win. A lot of
yeah. I won't play
people.
those games. I don't play games where I can't win.
Well, it was interesting that like you were like your whole frame of the conversation was around like there's no. I'm not going to benefit from this because primarily because no one's mind is actually going to change. So why make enemies if you're not going to be able to do any good anyway?
Right. And I might be robbing someone of the ability to do a 5 minute flow or primal athleticism or the new elasticity program. Like, why would I shoot myself in the foot uh to not make a change in what's going on?
Yeah, this is where
You
the
know,
type
I
of product you sell actually it dictates this a bit. Because I found just the
yeah.
opposite is, uh, but I'm working with. all my clients were high ticket. We're meeting weekly. And I have a bunch of like, I'm servicing people who I'd say half my clients would consider themselves to be holistic health practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
And so that there's I don't know, I'd say every other call I've ever had in the last 3 years, something has come up that if you were super pro vaccine and right in the mainstream, you would have gotten triggered right out. Actually, I'm pretty sure I lost a couple clients last year. Maybe I had
I was just thinking that. I
something
was just thinking that.
something that I said or whatever. But here's the thing: is the clients that left that I suspected were more on the mainstream side. They were not good clients anyway. Like even like there was just maybe there was some type of resistance coming from them because they were hearing things inside of the group or whatever. And we keep it very mellow inside of my coaching programs. Like that type of thing might come up, but it's like we're approaching everything with love. And what can we do to be helpful? But that's not going to keep somebody who's like way on the other side, from being triggered. Even when you're coming from love, is if there's disagreement, then there's going to be a trigger.
And you probably got more raving fans out of the deal by verbalizing your opinions about what was going on. You didn't leave it untouched. You were like, hey, this is what I think about this. What do you guys think about this? And so it almost worked in your case like a filter, I believe.
Yeah, it's and I had to keep I would say I censored myself a bit. I was not as outspoken as I could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the reason that is because I started seeing the shadow banning coming in.
Right.
Um, every time I made a post that had certain things in it, dude, the likes were almost zero. The engagement was down. It wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
content. There was a true, you know, I went from like everything got cut to like 20% after certain posts. And on Instagram specifically. Like my Instagram account has never recovered. Um,
Yeah.
and you're right. Like it creates a lot of uh, raving fans to be controversial, to be
Right.
polarizing. Like if you're for certain
If you're
brands, for certain types of brands, being polarizing is like the best thing. But in order to be at peace with that, is you have to let go of judging people who are judging
mm-hmm.
you. Like, oh,
Right.
if you're going to do anything great, people are going to judge you for it. If you have a bunch of money, people are going to
Mm-hmm.
think you're a rich asshole. Like you have to be people who are not okay with being judged tend to, not do big things because they're afraid of being judged by others. And that's their own judgment that gets in the way.
Yeah, and look, most people just go along with what the crowd does, not recently, but since forever. And
Right.
that's how social structures work. That's why a pyramid is shaped like a pyramid and it's not shaped like a giant circle. There's a reason. Like, what if you try to look at a management chart for a company? What if you what if you were in the military and every Marine had the same vote as the generals? You would never get anything done. So the whole concept of leadership and chain of command is really valuable. So it's natural that most people are followers. So it's so important, I think, to not judge people personally based on these choices. I don't have to accept uh, what they're saying. Like if someone says, "Hey, you must do this," I don't know, for whatever reason, my knee jerk is always to be like, no, I don't
Right.
think so. I'm, in fact, I might have done it until you told me to,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we have a
Uh,
rule in the house is if Ashley has a hard time getting me to do something, all she has to do is tell me I'm not allowed to do that thing, and then it gets
mhm.
done.
We're gonna explore this psychological kink with you another day.
uh,
Just
you
tell
know,
me I'm a bad boy if I do it.
It's true. Like
Only
I,
bad
I
boys
feel
take
like
out the trash, Michael.
I feel like
Only bad boys take out the trash.
I feel like I feel like I've shared this story before, but I'll share it again. Is I discovered on a mushroom experience. I was at a men's retreat. There was about 20 of us eating mushrooms, and I was feeling restless. And one of my buddies comes over, and he's like, "Mike, just settle down." I was pacing, which is a
Mhm.
thing that I tend to do. And he was like, "Dude, just relax." And every time he would try to get me to relax, I would get more amped up.
Tense up.
And something hit for him, and he goes, "Well, let's try this, Mike. You're not allowed to relax." And I laid in the grass, and I fell into myself, and I drifted into this spaciousness, beautiful
Mhm.
place of relaxation. And then after a few moments, I came back, and then I started becoming restless again. And we were playing with that. I go, you know what? Let's like really put me in a trance. I'm gonna go out, get me in this really. I went to like close my eyes, relax, started digging in. Like, where does this rebellion come from? Where is this thread of like the knee jerk reaction of you have to do this? And I go, no, I don't. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do the opposite of that. And I was just like digging and digging and digging, and I was like, this shit. A lot of times when I discover something like this in my consciousness, I'm like, oh, I can find the root of this, or I can disassemble
Mhm.
this and make sense of it or whatever. And I was just digging, digging, and digging. I was like, this is ancestral. This is not a this isn't like a behavior that I was taught growing
Mhm.
up. This is a human trait, and some humans are much more agreeable, and other humans are way less agreeable. And as I went into this meditation on mushrooms, and I'm like digging, 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 is I see my ancestors pioneering across the United States, across America, 300
Mhm.
years ago. And
Those are some disagreeable bastards
those
to take a wagon across the vast expanse of
Yeah,
land.
and what hit me was like that that drive, that internal something that exists, and probably about who knows what percentage of
Some
the
percentage.
population.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 10% of the population. I mean, when you look at Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote about tipping points, and innovators and early adopters, and then you have everybody else, and I think 10 to 15% fall in that category, and of the population. And yeah, I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, this is why somebody goes, it's the rebellious nature. It says, you know what, I could stay here and I could become a blacksmith just like my dad, or I could farm the same land that my dad had, and we can just kind of keep
Mhm.
this going and expanding on what already is. But moving to a whole nother city, moving across the country, leaving a continent, to leave Europe, to hop on a boat and possibly die in order to get away from whatever tradition. That's why I see it, is like there's some type of tradition that existed there that you wanted to be different. And it's such
Mhm.
a deep drive that I got down there and I started looking at that, and I go, I don't think there's nothing wrong with this, and there's nothing to change. The only thing I get, and it's not like my rebellious nature was a surprise at that point. It's something I've looked at a lot. And, now I just am very careful about, why am I being rebellious like that?
Mhm.
When I hear something, and that thing in deep inside of me springs up and goes, no, motherfucker. I got to go, okay, am I rebelling just to rebel, or is this like a righteous rebellion? Like,
Mhm.
is this a rebellion that's for a cause? Is this going to, bring, is this a good thing? Like, the rebellion of like, oh, everybody has to get a vaccine. And before they even announced anything about a vaccine, I knew that was going to happen. I know how to read history.
I did not see that part of it coming.
Oh, you
I
didn't?
didn't I didn't
Oh
No,
no.
I was just simply surprised that everything got closed and people were pretty
Uh,
much okay with that. At that time, I was like, "This is insane! Like people can't make their own choices anymore."
yeah.
But then every step along the road, just to remind us all to love one another, because you have had so much exploration of yourself from a lot of different angles, with and without psychedelic assistance. And the average person has experienced almost none of those things.
Yeah, almost none.
So I think one of the things that is problematic is the us and them mentality. So you just say, "Oh, well, they're evil." Obviously, like I don't think it's up to me to decide that someone shouldn't take a certain medicine. Like I probably wouldn't give a child any type of attention deficit medication, but I also wouldn't send them to school.
Right.
But if my neighbor hopped their kid up on speed and sent them to public school, I'm not going to tell them that they're retarded. I'm not going to think that they're a bad person. I'm just going to recognize that they don't have the same life experience and thoughts that I do. And that's okay. And I think the only line is the original line. Like the whole concept of drawing a line in the sand, the line in the sand is the line where you cross this line and we're going to fucking fight. There are no more words anymore. Like that's the only line that really is important when it comes to that. So if someone tries to coerce you in some way, that's a line. But if someone says something that you don't like, is that even really a line? Or have you just created some self punishment inside your own mind and go, I don't like what that person said, and your words are violence toward me.
Yeah.
And so now I judge you. Now I judge you as bad. And you make yourself into a very sick puppy, basically.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think can be difficult for people, and I've had to work through this myself, is when things appear to be incredibly obvious, and and
No such thing, to interrupt you.
well, the there's this idea that whatever is completely obvious to me, there's something else that's completely obvious to somebody else, right? So to me, I look at the situation, I go, okay, it's like I don't see any logical explanation of why you would do this. It looks like it's emotionally driven, um, and so looking at it and going, okay, what information am I ignoring? So I like to look at it from a place of ignorance, and so uh, ignorance is basically the act of ignoring. A lot of people think about ignorance, they confuse ignorance and patience. Patience being you simply were not presented with the information ever. It was hidden from you, or you simply didn't stumble across this information ever. That's patience. And the other is ignorance, which is usually the case in that people have been presented with some type of information and they have decided to ignore it. And
It sounds
so,
like cognitive dissonance, where you basically have this belief, and even if you take in new information that is counter to that belief, you ignore it. You say, you know what, that information actually doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and keep believing what I believe
yeah,
because this belief feels really good. So you're thinking of ignorance like a verb. I remember you saying this before. Really interesting.
yeah, it makes more sense to me. Like it's like because people use ignorance as an excuse, and it's not an excuse. It's a flaw, and the uh, the act of ignorance occurs, I believe, primarily to emotional trauma. people experience something um, that uh, that feel similar to something in the past, and the emotional response is so strong that they won't even allow themselves to look at the new information or accept it or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't make it through the filter due to some type of emotional trauma. So for me, I go, okay, um the way I see it is, ignorance is evil. And the reason ignorance, like, if we look at evil, evil is just the absence of truth. Is basically the way I see it. It's the absence of it's keeping things in the dark. Like, I would rather not know. I can't look at that. And so what we have is
Interesting.
we have a lot of ignorance happening because the information is there. And I'm looking at this article, and it's wanting to blame the unvaccinated for not being vocal enough. But the truth was, is there was plenty of people who were vocal enough. There was, there's Twitter files being released talking about how this was suppressed from the top down with these tech companies. Uh, uh, People were called conspiracy theorists and tinfoil hat wearers and all this stuff. And people were citing research. It wasn't just theories. It was just plain old facts were being labeled as conspiracy theories. And so what I witnessed in the last few years is just this huge amount of ignorance, which the, experiencing the world that way made me really sad. Like, I had like bouts of depression about it, and just seeing like how many people are ignoring. And I can say that, I don't think this is like I think that most people that fall on one side or the other are actually legitimately, uh, like, I think most people haven't actually looked at both sides. 99% of the
Mm.
population has not looked at, okay, what's this information saying? What's this information? Comparing it side by side. They keep choosing one version, one narrative, and really sticking with that. And if it doesn't fit, they don't look at it. And then
I think
there's
that is a logical fallacy called confirmation bias. Like what you're
totally
saying to me sounds like there are basically three core things at play, which is something I've also journaled about actually. It's confirmation bias. So you make up your mind and then you go research to confirm your belief that you started with. And then you have the logical fallacies of God and the devil, which is blindly trust this guy, and then conspiracy, the devil, blindly distrust this guy.
right,
So it has
right.
nothing to do with the argument being had, and it relates to the tribalism that we've been talking about. And when you're faced with turn off your logic because this is God or because this is the devil, you are literally drinking the Kool, not literally, but you're metaphorically drinking the Kool-Aid, and you're saying, I care more about fitting in with my tribe than with using my critical thinking or understanding what logical fallacies may be at play. And I understand why people would make that choice. So I also would say to you, if someone just doesn't know, like they don't have the information, would you just use the word uninformed?
I say they're nascent.
Nascent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So confirmation bias, appeal to authority, and ad hominem attack. Ad hominem attack is name calling you're bad. Appeal to authority is blindly trust God. Confirmation bias is you go looking for stuff. You go looking for information after you've already made up your mind.
yeah. And in a world where it's cool to be an atheist, God is government. So that's uh that's the
Right.
that's the trap there.
Well, you know me. I love that atheism is a popular religion because I think it's the most arrogant perspective there is. It's based on this idea of an intellectual circle jerk.
Yeah.
Like there is definitely no God. And some people say, oh, that's not what an atheist means. Atheist just means you haven't seen proof that there is God. But if that was true, you would just be agnostic, in my perspective.
Right.
So this whole idea that both atheism and theism are based on faith, you have to take that jump. It's like I watched that video you were talking about with Rupert Sheldrake, I think
Oh
was the
yeah.
guy's name.
Oh yeah.
They just made a video. I think it was on like After School, SKOOL, the YouTube
Mm-hmm.
channel. They did
Mm-hmm.
an animated version.
Mm-hmm.
And he put one of my favorite quotes in there from Terrence McKenna about the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good example of what we're talking about is you get caught in this trap where you are really just trying to fit in with your tribe. And having a tribe based on faith in something is one thing, but having having a tribe based in faith, based on the faith that there is nothing, is really funny.
Yeah.
It's like an anti-belief.
Yeah. I think those people are,
Yeah.
the more easily to control.
I heard that the higher your education was, the more likely you were to get the vaccination. This particular new flavor of the month one.
Oh no, no, no. I think PhDs were one of the largest groups of people that didn't get it initially.
That didn't?
Did not.
Oh, I thought overall, the more educated a person was,
No, no, no.
not necessarily the more.
Yeah, let me reframe this. The way this stat works is out of the people who are unvaccinated, there's a lot of PhDs. Most PhDs probably got it.
Well, most people did, if I'm
Most
correct.
people did, but yeah, I mean, are they educated or are they indoctrinated? Both. You know, education and indoctrination don't. They usually go hand in hand
Probably
if you're going through an institution for your education.
Oh yeah, and probably the core similarity was the tribalism more than anything else. Like
Probably.
you want to fit into the tribe. There are so many threats being leveled at that sort of thing, and it's easy in the moment to get swept up into a frenzy of like, this is the end of the world is here. You better do this thing really quick.
Well, when you
But
put it like that, it sounds ridiculous.
I mean that's basically
That's what happened.
What happened.
What I want to get at here is there is a difference between and I invite people to look at this because I know Max and I approach it this way is like be the person who investigates all sides. So, a lot of people who were hip enough to not get vaccinated, not everybody, a lot of people, it was just due to the whole, it was political and tribal, but there's a large group of us who were looking at all the data. Like I was crunching the data that was being published by CNN. I was looking at all that. I was looking at both sides. I was looking at all arguments. And I go, yeah, like I'm pretty sure I'm right now because I've been if you check my Twitter account, I follow a bunch of people that would surprise. I mean, I fucking follow PhDs in gender studies, which are the most fun people to troll. But
whatever it takes to help you whack off, man. I
yeah,
support it.
Well, I follow BLM leaders and I follow, people who are up to things which I don't think are a good idea, basically. And I'm still like consuming their content. I'm still going, okay, well, what is it? What are they saying that I might be missing here? And so, my encouragement is for people to really look at, if there appears to be two sides, just take all the information in and make your decision from there. But if you find yourself getting so emotionally triggered that you can't even look at certain articles. You're not allowing yourself to visit certain websites. You're not allowing yourself to listen to certain podcasts because it just pisses you off so much. Then, you're, even if you're, quote unquote, right, you're, that's not going to ensure that you're right most of the time. It just means you're going to be right about that one thing. And don't let that
You'll just be
evidence,
easy to trick.
you just
You'll just be easy to trick.
become very
That's
easy to
all.
trick. So like, I think a lot of people who have been right about this vaccine, and a lot of fucking big names are coming out and being like, you were right, I was wrong, you know? And I think, yeah, we need to
And
caution
who
people
knows?
from,
Who
we need,
knows?
we need to caution people from thinking that they were right for the wrong reasons.
Well, and maybe for some people it was a good idea. I don't really know. I just defend everybody's right to make the choice for themselves, which is informed consent, which is basically one of the
well,
most
this,
critical
this
foundations
is
of all
where
medicine.
an interesting fear
Like,
loop comes in that I noticed is, so when everyone was getting vaccinated, the argument for making other people get vaccinated was, well, that's the only way we can stop it is if we all get vaccinated, right? Like it's the only
right.
way it works. It's like, well, uh, I don't know if you know this, but it is not possible for us to produce enough vaccines for the entire planet. So that plan should have been scrapped from the very beginning. Um, By the way,
Oh
when you
boy.
start crunching the numbers on how many manufacturing plants, how much they can produce, and how much time, you have to come to the conclusion at some point that uh, a large percentage, probably most of what people were getting injected was not even a true COVID vaccine. And
Oh boy.
so,
We should
uh,
just title this episode "I Told You So." Love, Mike.
I like that. This is my, no. You know what? If we're gonna do an "I told you" show, I want to prepare for it. I gotta make a
Okay,
longer
we'll let you
list.
do, and I told you so. I'll be here to break the tension every once in a while.
but the thing is like all these people are like, you're gonna put me in danger. Like I'm gonna get the vaccine. You're gonna put me in danger if you're not vaccinated. And of course, people who are not vaccinated are like, well, if it works, I don't see what the fucking problem is. But that wasn't good enough. And it actually swung back the other way. So,
Peer pressure.
it swings
Peer
back the other
pressure
way is
works. Peer pressure works on
there
a lot of
was
people.
there's all this I can call it propaganda, or there was a lot of speculation about people who got the vaccine were going to be shedding the vaccine. Okay, that the vaccine is
Yep.
toxic. Now I can't even
Right.
be around these people because
Right.
of what they've done now. And so like
Uh-huh.
I watched it swing to the other side. It's like, if we're going to be afraid to hang out with vaccinated people, this is like the same fucking thing that they were afraid of hanging out with us because we were unvaccinated. So,
Totally.
and I don't know, maybe that shedding shit's for real. I've heard it go back and forth. Um, I can't see how there wouldn't be something coming off of those people, but I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to change. I'm not going to make drastic changes in my lifestyle to try to avoid people who've been vaccinated. Some of my best friends have been vaccinated, and we spend time together. I stay at their house. They stay at my house. We all hang out.
But if you
Um,
thought it would kill you, you might.
yeah, I mean, well, there was a few weeks where there was a debate between Ashley and I was like, fuck, should we be traveling? Should we be
Mm-hmm.
mixing it up where the majority of the population, we went, to countries where the vaccination rate was like 90 something percent. And,
Mm-hmm.
there was a point I'm like, you know what? The best thing we can do is just be same fucking strategy we've been using the whole time, be as personally healthy as possible, make the right decisions. And, if this is the reality, is like everyone who's vaccinated is going to like shed some toxic shit on me, that shit's going to happen no matter what. I'm going to be at the grocery store. I'm going to be whatever. It's like, I'm not going to live
Yeah.
in fear. So I'm not going to live in fear of it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So they
and
got you just by convincing your friends. They fucking got you.
they got me. They got me.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. I mean, it's very divisive. There's this tremendous rift still between people who made one choice or another, and it's tricky with something that is invisible to the naked eye,
Oh,
right? I mean, we
it's
really
it's the
I feel
perfect
like
it's the
if we're
perfect threat.
I feel like if we're going to do this, we should just go all out and do a whole episode on the alleged special coronavirus. Because I mean, look, there are so many different points to consider that have been proven later on, including how they were measuring the testing for it, like whether you had this special thing or not.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that the response could have happened the year before that, 3 years later, with any normal uh, flu or cold or something like that, because of the way that it was responded to. So it's really more about the response than the actual
Yeah.
ailment. In my opinion, it's impossible to prove in retrospect. One of the things I journaled about was that, like, it'll be impossible to tell now if it would have been better to do something different. So it won't matter, and no one will believe you anyway. So because I remember when my business got closed down, I was like, fuck it, they'll even if this all happened for no reason, they can just pretend like, oh well, only this many died, but if we hadn't done these draconian things and fucked up your life, 10 times that many people would have died, and everyone would be like, yeah. I'd be like,
Well, I mean,
it's so impossible to say.
all you gotta do is look at Sweden.
Who's gonna look at that though, Mike? That's not on the news, motherfucker. Dude, they got you. They got everybody. And maybe, like, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not too vociferous about the whole thing. The only thing I knew to do was I talked to my brother and his wife, who was pregnant at the time, and they wanted to give her an injection. And I talked to my special lady friend, and I was like, this is what I'm doing. Like, what do you guys think about this? Because it's important to have people who will be truthful with you and that you can speak openly with. But other than that, everybody's free to make their own choices, is my opinion. So I don't, I try not to get too caught up in anything I believe, even if I really do think I'm correct. It's not,
Right.
it's not useful, really. It's not useful.
It's a great way to approach. All right, we got to wrap up because I got to take my lady to get some vitamin injections and shit. So,
dude, we missed so many opportunities to talk about how whipped you are now that you're with this new lady. Jesus, waiting on this lady hand and foot. Oh, let me get you a superfood smoothie, dear. What a guy. No,
yeah,
I'm just kidding. It's
yeah.
cool.
I was
David
bored of the
Goggins
other
would tell you
version.
to ignore. David Goggins would tell you to ignore your lady and just do 1,000 push-ups.
Yeah, the old version
Go
of me
run on your broken feet.
was getting old, where I would have slapped me now, but it's I wore that out. We're in a new phase.
I think there were some good takeaways about relationships, though, today. You'd have to go back about a half hour into the conversation from here if you want to pick up some of those nuggets. But
We call it
I
COVID
think,
relationships.
oh, God. Well, anyway, you can find me at macshank.com, and everybody buys sneakers, so you'll be well taken care of at my shop. I do not discriminate against anybody based on their skin color, voting habits, or vaccination status. So all are welcome to better themselves.
Legit.
Mikey?
Yeah. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Mike_Bledsoe. Yeah. Click the link in that bio. Who knows where I'll have it shuttling you off to next, but it'll probably be somewhere where you can get on the newsletter where you can make sure you're updated on everything every time we post a show, every time I post one of my interviews, and just whatever whatever ramblings I might have. I think I'm a better writer than I am a speaker.
That's for
So
sure.
yeah.
I'm just kidding. By the way, if you guys have hate mail, send it to Mike. We'll do a hate mail episode.
Yeah, send me
We
all
can
your hate
address
mail.
each one personally.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I would love
Actually,
it.
I have a whole folder in my email for trolls.
Oh,
People
that's
like sent me
incredible.
troll emails.
I love it.
I don't know if I want to give them any more juice than they already got, but it's also fun for me. Love you all.
Yeah.
Love you, Max.
Love you, buddy. Bye.